Well. Welcome to another episode of Black Bells and Boardrooms. I am so stoked today, Renard. We have ourselves a fabulous guest in Joe Fang. And Renard, why don't you do this? Why don't you introduce Mr. Joe Fang for us?
Oh, thank you so much. We have the photographer's photographer, the owner and operator, Joe's Headshots, and also a physical therapist, Joe Fang. Thank you for being here, Joe. We are so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me here.
Well, Joe, typically we have people with martial arts background here, but I gotta tell you, as a martial artist, my joints hurt. you know and when I was introduced to you, I was thinking to myself, man, Joe could probably talk a ton about how to stay fit, and that lines up perfectly with the folks that listen to this podcast, the black belts who are also in corporate and entrepreneurship, etc. So Joe, why don't we start there? How about you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us, how did you pivot to this journey from being, just an amazing physical therapist person to this amazing photographer person?
Yeah, well, thank you. I started practicing physical therapy back in 2013, right? I wanted to, be out there, help people, help them recover, regain their mobility, if it's sports, improve their performance, right? Um, I really it was an interesting journey because I've always loved art, right? But I've always been somebody who enjoys the story behind everything I see, I hear. When you get to work with patients as a physical therapist, as a clinician, day after day, week after week, you get to really know them, right? They're not just a case to you. They're not just a case of back pain. There's not just a case of a hip replacement, right? You're trying to understand, hey, after your hip replacement, are you still going to be doing your wrestling? Are you going to go on go on to your dream trip to Italy somewhere, right? So they kind of share all those things with you. And I think I've seen improved outcome when you get to humanize these people. You understand their story, and it improves the outcome and improves their compliance. So I think that's very important to me. And within my journey early on, I met an amazing founder of the clinic that I used to work with. His name is Randy, and he was one of the leaders where I can tell or confidently say that he was truly invested in the people around him. And so leadership means a lot to me. I've seen the good, I've seen the bad. 2017, when my wife and Sarah and I, shout out to her, by the way, because this journey would not have been possible without her. We traveled to New York City. We've never been before. We've always wanted to go. I brought my camera. We just, out there for a regular trip. And I had my camera on the street, snapping away photos. And she said, Joe, you look happy. And I said, well, I am happy. She said, no, it's different. You behind the camera. And so she pushed me into, finding my own path, taking a little bit of a risk, a little jump, because I'm very, very type A. I want to minimize risk. I'm not a risk taker. So the change of mindset is huge, right? You guys are all about leadership. Being able to just say, yes, I'm going to do it and we'll figure it out, but also just believing that you are capable of, that's what led to all this. And as I start to hone into photography, I kind of found my voice. I wanted to help leaders. I wanted to help professionals who are striving to be leaders, find their way, get them off to a good start. I want to feel like I'm the platform where they take their launch, right? If I can position them correctly, that's a huge benefit there.
Joe, you said something that is so powerful to me: the journey from going from one career to another. So walk us through, what did you tell yourself? What was your mindset like when you were transitioning into this photographer mindset and saying, this is the journey I want to take? Because I know, a lot of us struggle with it, and as leaders, we recognize this in our teammates, but I think your perspective would be extremely valuable to add.
No regrets, right? No regrets. I did not want to be 45 years old, 50 years old, look back and be like, why didn't I at least try? I wanted to give myself the opportunity. If I fail gloriously, and that I did it, I tried it. I also wanted to set an example for my daughter, Ava, that she can grow up, be strong, find her path, her passion. I think as long as she's smart about it, I don't care if she goes to Harvard, get a PhD, right? Like you can be successful in many ways possible.
That's amazing. A support structure, a beautiful support structure, and a mindset that is just as powerful and vigorous.
That's important. I think it all starts from, the people around you. And really, a lot of people have fears, right? When I work with people in photography, with their branding portraits, with their headshots, people are like, well, I don't like how I look. I don't like my smile, right? I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. But, I tell folks, you got something to bring. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here right now, trying to work on something with me. You've got something, and it's not, not necessarily your looks that got you there. And I think you just need to really find what your voice is, find where your value is, and just hone in on that, you know? And with photography, it's just all about showing who you really are, not just what you look like. And I don't want you to try to look like somebody else. I want you to be that person that one day somebody else sees your picture and be like, I want to look like you because you've inspired somebody, right? Yeah.
Man,
That's
that's
amazing.
great. That's great. And I'm gonna add this, and Amir already knows it. Me and Joe took some phenomenal pictures for me. I mean, I want to have what executive swagger look like. Joe did that for me. Joe made it comfortable. It felt at ease. He made you feel at home when you came to his house, and I appreciate that. And I got to see his photos previously. I was getting ready for another podcast I was going to be on, and talked to my friend Tyler. Tyler was like, "Man, we set you up with a free photo shot every time," and he said, "You're going to get to work with this phenomenal photographer." And I was like, "Are you talking about Joe Fang?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Man, I just finished talking to him a few minutes ago." So it aligned correctly, and what was produced was phenomenal. If you want to talk about a return on investment, branding, etc., Joe put that all in perspective for me. And Joe, I want to talk about your photography side for a minute. I want to get that origin story of, you were a physical therapist and then you decide, I'm going to take this chance and become a photographer. Give us the origin story of you becoming, now Joe's headshots now. How did all that come to fruition?
Man, I think it's all about just really understanding you got to put yourself in other people's shoes. I think it starts from there, right? If you don't understand who it is in front of you, you're a leader, you don't understand your team, how do you get your message across to them? Right? It's the same thing as any entrepreneurs, any marketing people. Like, if you don't understand your audience, how do you get your message across? And I didn't. I mean, I was a physical therapist. I had a clinician mindset. I had no idea what I was doing. I was freaking out. I knew I had some sort of talent in photography. I wanted to take pretty photos. I was doing everything from models to, family photos to pet portraits, events, right? Anything but headshots, right? And I think I didn't resonate with it early on because headshots didn't mean anything to me. The ones I've seen were very outdated. I don't see the soul in the picture. I don't feel like it represents the person well. Until later on, figured out a process to not only modernize it as far as the aesthetics, right, but also, how to tell that person's story, right? A lot of photographers may say that, but it comes down to asking the right question. And same thing with leaders, right? Ask questions, know who's working with you, know who's working underneath you, make them feel heard, make them feel seen. And that's what I try to do with these leaders as well, because, there's so many different types of leadership styles. I'm sure you guys know that. And I don't think there is one that trumps all, right? I think it's all about how you utilize it. And how you get through to your audience. And so over time, I knew I wanted to celebrate leadership based on my past experience, right? So I started headshots. And if I'm going to do it, just like any leader, I want to be the best. I want to be known, right? And if I can do that, great. That means I'm helping others, and I want to keep helping others in a different way. I was a therapist before, I'm a photographer now. But if I can make your leadership stand out, right? Make you look like a leader, feel like a leader, and position you right, that's where my value's at. And I really love your term executive swagger. I kind of wonder what the backstory is behind that. How'd you come up with it, and what does it mean to you?
Man, he's asking me questions on our podcast. All right. Okay. So executive swagger for me. Everyone says executive presence, and what that entails. But for me, it's, swagger came from how you dress, how you present yourself, how you can be a lion in a room with other lions, if that makes sense. When you're an executive, you get to sit in a room with other executives, board members, board of directors. So you need to have that swagger. And a lot of times it's the swagger without saying anything. And we talk about the photos that you produce. One of my main photos on LinkedIn, I told people, I said that photo is for the seat that is available for the board of directors, for that executive, that C suite. That's what that photo is for. That photo is for someone to imagine me sitting in the seat without even asking me about it. So that's what that executive swagger. The executive swagger is also knowing what you know and what you don't know. Meaning like you're not in that conversation, you're not in those boardrooms, etc., and you're trying to talk about stuff that you don't know. You're keen on who's in the room, how you can be a value in that room and what you can do. So that's what executive swagger is for me. I said, it's like when the simplest term I always tell anybody is like when you put on that good suit. It's custom, you feel good, you're about to go out for the night. That's that swagger you have when you're walking into a room with that good suit. And that's what executive swagger is. And Joe, I'm gonna turn it around. I'm gonna ask you a question. I know, when you became a photographer, you taught under somebody, correct? Who was that person that you taught under to bring that person you are in now in photography?
Yeah, so the person I trained under was Peter Hurley. He's based in New York City, widely known as one of the best headshot photographers in the world. That his work was what caught my attention, right? It was modernized, it had that edge, it had that swagger, right? And you can see that it's this confidence, authentic confidence coming out of that person, right? So that's where the value is at. I mean, his lighting is special. I love the looks, but it's all about how can you bring the best out of that subject in front of you. And if you can do that, then that's where things get really exciting, right? And your subjects, they feel connected to their photos, right? And yeah, Amir, have you ever had a photo where you felt connected to, even if it's a family photo, something that generates some emotions?
Yeah, so I recently got my headshots done as well. And after listening to Renard's story, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should have called Joe first. But this is not to say that, the photographer I went to did a terrible job. I thought she was wonderful as well, and she got the story I wanted to tell. Her style obviously is different from yours, and I think that's what resonated with me is that you have a very unique style. It's like a Picasso or Renoir. You see that style and you instantly know who the artist behind it is. That's the vibe I got from your photograph. So I think it's fantastic that you're able to carve yourself away from the rest of the folks who are in the same space as you are. And to Renard, with the executive swagger, I don't think I've ever heard anybody else. And the next time I hear that word, my mind will immediately think, it's Renard. That's his phrase. But yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what one of the questions that is in my mind. Joe, as you think about your workflow as the process where you invite the subject into your home and you ask them these questions, walk us through some of the ways in which you sort of prepare the subject to basically project that confidence in the photograph that you want to take for them. How do you bring the subject around to the point where they're just exuding, just dripping with that confidence that you want to take in that shot?
Yeah, I think just creating an environment where they can be them, right? Like I don't like silence. I like to play a little music in the background. Sometimes I tell them, hey, if you got some hype song, a playlist, play it because that's you, right? We'll talk. We'll talk family. We'll talk kids. We'll talk travels. Whatever it is. Just kind of know that we are person to person. We're humanizing this whole process. It's not you to the camera, it's you to me. And that way feels more natural. I think that's how, I like that. We need to bring some humor into it. We'll try, but at the end of the day, I think just getting to know that person, that's it's as simple as that.
Yeah. So I like that simplicity. I think, when I'm due again for the next photo shoot, I might be talking to you then, Joe.
Hey, I'd love to have you here, Amir.
So Joe, as you as I'm thinking about martial arts more and more in our conversation and trying to think about your background, one of the things that I recognize um, as an instructor, my goal is always to try and bring balance into the classroom. You've got different emotions going in the floor on the dojo floor. You've got different kinds of personalities in your photography career so far. How do you balance resetting your mind and bringing all these different personalities, these executive personalities, and how do you then create this consistency in your work? Because I look at those consistent photographs and I see that pattern, that artist behind it. But how do you go, like, what's your process? Because to me that's incredible that you're able to harmonize it across so many different profiles.
Thank you, man. I mean, some things you can't really put into words or describe. I mean, like confidence is confidence, right? You can tell when a person looks confidence is because they're comfortable being themselves, or maybe our conversation led them to think about what could be next, right? And they want to be that. They're striving for it, and now you just make them look like it. Right. And that sets the tone, that sets the platform, possibilities, everything. I don't try to pose everybody the same if I can help it. I mean, at the end of the day, it is a professional shoot. There's only so many ways I can, pose them. With I'm all about pushing the limit, right? But we still got to keep it professional in a way. Unless we start to talk more into just some personal branding, or they just want a shot that celebrates how far they come along, then we can do whatever we want with that, right? So yeah, you're not gonna see me posing Renard with a yoga pose and upside down, whatever it is, right? I want him to look like him, but the best version of him, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I try to keep it simple. I think overcomplicating it is not good. It brings too much noise, distraction. But just as long as you know who you're talking to, how they operate, how they think. Some people are more analytical, right? And some people are more emotional based, and it's okay, but you just got to be able to resonate with.
Amazing. So personal branding, any advice for folks listening that you would share with respect to personal branding?
I think some people have forgotten that even though you work corporate, your face, you're still your own personal brand, right? Unless you are ready to settle right off in the sunset, you're there trying to, keep bringing opportunities to yourself, right? So it all starts with first impression. I was talking to a dear friend of mine recently, and he kind of, we were talking about something about deliveries and speech and everything, and it kind of inspired me because photography is a delivery, right? I mean, you how you work, like in person in the office, right? You show up and you walk into the room, your team's working over there, right? Maybe you just got done with a meeting, and there's been things that are on your mind, and you're deep in thought, you're looking very serious. It kind of puts them on guard. All of a sudden they quiet down, they sit up straight, they're kind of rigid, right? Versus you come in and you're the leader, right? You put those behind you, but you still show up with a bright smile. It makes them feel at ease. The energy changes, right? um so the delivery is really important. And so in the photo, when you look the part, that's what's going to be on people's mind. That's what's going to be on your C-suite's mind. When the next thing, that next opportunity opens up, you're the first one they're going to talk to, and that's your swagger right there. It really is. you know
That's
you
true.
basically told them over the last 3 months, 4 months, 5 months that they've been seeing your photo, I can do it. That's what your photo's saying. I got this.
Man, that's true. That is 100% true. You hit it on the nail, Joe. On the head. You hit it on the head, not on the nail. Hit it on the head. And I want people to understand what's the difference of a professional photo shoot like you have, and the difference between a professional photo shoot and then going to the mall and getting a pack of 30 for 29.99. I want people to understand that sometimes you have to understand what the return on investment is for having a professional photo shoot for your branding. So please, let the black belts and boardrooms, listeners understand why it's so important.
Yeah, when you're if you do so, like AI headshots, for example, right? It's gonna keep getting better, and they'll take your photos. It's gonna look like you, but AI can never replicate that kind of energy. the confidence, the happiness, the content, right? Whatever you're trying to do, that's something that AI just can't get, and I don't believe will ever get. When it comes to the cheaper photo shoots, and of course, I'm not saying that there's no value in it necessarily, right? And everybody's got different budget. I'm not here to judge that, and some people you got to start somewhere, and that's okay, right? But when you have the choice to, and you go with something that's, yeah, like you said, here's 30 photos for $50. Sure, you get a lot, but I'm pretty sure they're just clicking the shutter button. You're hiring somebody to click the shutter button for you, right? Versus somebody who's really trying to understand you and where you're trying to get to, and let's create something that's gonna make that kind of impact for you. So that also, just when you start using it, people can see that, right? You're gonna look at a profile and you're gonna be like, oh, this guy's invested in their brand, and I want to work with somebody who values that. Versus attracting others who are just those who don't really value that, right? That's really the big difference right there. I'm sure there are photographers who are cheaper or more expensive that does just as good, if not better work, right? There are definitely those out there as well. Find them. You just got to find the right fit.
No, that's true. That's true. It took me a while. I always say this. I said I never knew I needed branding and those great photos until we started taking them. And I remember we took the first photo. I didn't even have a jacket, it was just a white shirt. And I'm one of those people who didn't take a lot of photos. So I was one of those people don't take photos of me, etc. And I saw that first photo and saw myself inside. I'll be honest, I cried a little bit inside, and it was like I never saw myself like that, and I was like, wow. I was like, okay, I'm in the right place. Joe's the right person. He just brought everything that I talked about, etc. And that's the great superpower that you have. You're bringing out what people are looking for, and sometimes they don't even get a chance to tell you. You just know what to do. You take that first photo, be like, man, he knew what I needed. And I want to go into some of the people that you've taken photos for. Man, I think you've taken almost, half a DFW, maybe most of it now. You've taken
Trying.
photos of executives, managers, leaders, etc. Sometimes they're at your home, sometimes you go to their office. I want to understand, how is it when you have to go on the road to start taking photos? How's that feeling? How's that interaction different from someone coming to your studio to do the photos?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, just the fact that you're packing a bag, travel. I love travel, right? Travel means new experiences, new challenges. Challenges are scary, right? Especially things you don't know. You don't know what to expect. A lot of times, I thought everything was ready. I show up on location, right? And they said, "Yeah, we got this room ready for you." I would tell them ahead of time, "Hey, I need like a 12 by 15 kind of space to set up everything." They're like, "Yeah, don't worry, we got a conference room that's like 20 by 25 or something, right? It's gonna be all good." You get there, it's a 20 seat, a conference table, smack dab in the middle, and I can't do nothing about that. you know, you got to think on the fly. I think that's what makes it exciting, to be able to navigate that, instead of just being catered to all the time, right? And going in there, working with people who've never, had a good quality photo before, being able to show them, that they can look this way, right? The photos they see that people look good. I don't work with models anymore, right? I work with everyday professionals like us, and it's really the confidence, the energy that we can get out of you. That's what makes that photo attractive. Yeah, it's not the looks. So yeah, I love to just kind of go and see different places. I like to bring, when I travel to, like, for example, last year I went to New Orleans and Baton Rouge. I went to Orlando and Tampa. Sarah is my assistant, of course, and we brought Ava along. But family's important to me, and so being able to bring Ava along to show her the world, the good and the bad. Like, we'll go to a hotel and she's like, Dad, the bed's not comfortable. It's not soft. I'm like, well, you got it good over here at home, but the world's all not always gonna be perfect, right? You're gonna have to figure it out. You're gonna have to adapt. You're gonna have to, pivot. So I
Well,
think there's a lot of value in leaving my place of comfort here in my studio. Yeah. But I would prefer people to come to me. It's just the easy, right? Yeah.
So, Joe, do you have a story about a most challenging shoot you have taken, maybe recently or a while ago?
The most challenging shoot is working with somebody who is so critical and unsure of themselves. They're afraid to let themselves really come out. And that is definitely going to be the challenge there, trying to figure out how to speak their language, communicate with them, but even then, it's just if they're willing or not, right? So I think, and then that usually comes with corporate group work, because number one, most companies unfortunately, don't have the time to allow each person to just kind of take a little breather, spend a few minutes in front of the camera. They're running them through. They know these folks, they know what it means, and it means nothing to them. So to be able so corporate shoot is more challenging in that sense, just because they're being told by their boss, hey, we gotta do photos, right? And they've experienced it in the past. They don't want to do it. They don't like it. So I try to talk to leaders. I said, look, as long as you have that availability, right? Talk to your photographer, see if they can spend a few extra minutes, to get that subject in front of them to just relax and be a little more themselves and have a better time, right? It shows your team that the leader is invested in you. They're not just running you through there so they can say, hey, our company got new photos, but it's really for the company and not for the individual. And I've met good leaders though, really. I've talked to people and they said they agree. They said, okay, let's do 5 minutes a person, 7 minutes a person, right? Yeah, and those usually come out the very best.
So, if you talk about a leader who doesn't want to invest, what would you advise them? Like somebody, if I'm a brand new leader, what would you advise me to? How should I think about photography and what it does for my team?
I would say if you're a leader, for the most part, I don't think you stepped into the leadership role just like that, right? You've been in the field, you worked your way up, you've gotten to make good connections, right? Think about those who brought you along, right? Those who've inspired you, those who lent you a hand, right? You're a leader now. You're going to be that same person doing the same thing for those underneath you, right? A good leader, you want the team underneath you to succeed, right? You want them to be good. You want them to be better than you, really, right? That's what a true leader is. You celebrate their success, right? Don't be afraid of that. And if you can invest in them, they see it. They'll respond back, And photography is just only one way, obviously, right? I mean, that's what I do. And so I'll try to talk to the leader, say, hey, let's figure it out, right? How can we make this an amazing, experience for them? Let me help give you the prep guide. Let's form a message to them, maybe, right? To get them hyped up a little bit, to know that it's going to be a little different. Like the good leaders I've worked with, they said, hey, we want these photos to not just represent well for our company. We want them to just do something for their career. And oftentimes that means they understand if they find the next best opportunity, right? And that's outside of the company, great. They made a positive change to somebody's life. But I think some people may be a little afraid to let go of that. They're like, oh, who, we don't want to lose this member, right? But the thing is, when you are creating that kind of culture, it's going to attract more people, to you, good people, good talents, right? And then you keep cultivating them, you keep growing them.
Joe, I'm thinking about all the Teams meetings and Zoom meetings that I've ever been on where there's only the icon with the initials. Sometimes I wish that they would turn their cameras on,
Mhm.
but we know that's not always possible, right? So I'm just thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great if everybody had just a great, proud, professional shot that they could, display every time?
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people put that if you got a good picture, man, put it on there. Nobody wants to stare at your initials.
Exactly.
Have you put your new shot on there yet, Amir?
Oh, yeah. The day I got them back from the photographer, absolutely. I put it on updated all my accounts with it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
One thing I will say though, with you leaders out there, think about your audience, who you're talking to, right? If you're in a room with board directors, with C suites, right? Put on that executive swagger shot that you got, right? But now if you're talking to your team, dress down, like have a photo where you dress down a little bit, a little happier, make them feel comfortable.
That's true. That's a return on investment with the photo. That's why you have so many for if it's the boardroom, if it's for a Slack photo, if it's for a speaking engagement, etc. That's why all those photos matter so much. And I want to go back to something. I know family is big for you. You take the family with you all the time, when you travel. Why is family so important to have with you during those times, and how is family also, keep building that business that you have?
Yeah, I think family is the foundation of everything, right? That's the family, you trust them. There's never doubt, you can fall back on them. They always bring a smile to you, right? So I think without that, the foundation is weak. It starts from there. It's just as simple as that.
That that is straight to the point. I agree with that. I agree. I think for even for me, and I know for Amir, if we didn't have a great family life, if we didn't have great kids, etc., we couldn't do what we do in order to succeed in our professional lives if we didn't have great family. And I agree with that 100%. I think a lot of the backbone to a lot of businesses is having great family. And I got to meet your wife. I got to meet your daughter. I remember she brought the two potatoes to you while we're doing the photo shoot. It was awesome. Yeah, it was great, and seeing that also told me I was in the right place. Knowing that your family is part of Joe's headshots. It's not just you, it's your entire family that's part of that. And seeing that I knew was in the right place. And I want to segue into something that there's no commercials for you. There's nothing on TV that says, "Hey, you need to come down to Joe's and take photos." But your calling card or your commercial are your photos.
Mhm.
How important is that for you to make sure that your photos are showing right, if it's LinkedIn, etc.? Because that's for you, that's your calling card.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, that is the easy part is, that I easily have content put out there for marketing use, right? As long as my photos are good, right? And but to make sure everything is on brand, similar style lighting, people see it, repeated impressions, but also just kind of making sure that people love their photos, right? You have a wonderful group of supporters with everything you do. You got that small group you can lean in on, and they're gonna always think of you and bring people to you. The community building genuine relationship, that's so important, right? And LinkedIn, does that. I mean, you have you get to reach a lot of people you normally wouldn't be able to reach, but through that, then relationships start to form, right? Like me and you right now, and Amir, getting to meet each other, getting to know each other. That's so valuable. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna let the photos talk for themselves, and also just let my clients, if they're happy with their photos, the people around them, they know, yeah, and they'll kind of think of me, hopefully, when the right time comes.
Agree with that because I have told almost everybody who asks, "Man, I need to look for a photographer." I mentioned Joe's name. I'll be honest. I didn't said it in Slack. I didn't told other people because it's true. It's not a gimmick. It's what you bring out in those photos. What any photographer, any great photographer, I'll say that, brings out in photos that sometimes you're not asking for, but it's what you were looking for. I am one of those people who will shout your name with a bullhorn and say, "Hey, this is the person you need to come see for that." So, Amir, I'm going to tell you, drive down to DFW, come get your photos taken by this guy right here. Anytime, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to set you up. Come take some photos. Not now, I will say this: your photos, Amir, were great. They were great. So I don't want to knock that. You had some awesome photos, but the next photos, come drive to DFW and come get your photos taken.
I don't need any convincing, Renard. I think at some point Joe and I will connect at his home. I'll be driving from Austin, Texas, over there to his area. So for sure, for sure.
I,
So
I
so
might be in Austin, Texas sooner than you think. So
oh,
I'll
well,
let you
if
know
you
about it.
are,
Yep.
If you are, then you gotta let me know.
Yeah, we were talking LinkedIn, and somebody reached from Austin reached out today, so we're trying to figure out something out about that. So
All right, fantastic. So on that note about LinkedIn, I talk to a lot of young professionals as well who come to me for mentorship and things like that. And in just speaking with you, I know the power of photography and just that image when you are online and what it does for your professional career. What advice would you share with young folks just starting their career? I mean, LinkedIn is practically embedded now in the corporate culture, entrepreneurship culture. You
yeah,
can't escape it at this point. So what would you tell these young people?
you know, I would say that basically some of the young professionals I work with, they are concerned about how young they look, right? So the thing is, I know. For others, it's like, man, I look old. I don't want to look old, right? But just like I tell those who are, aging gracefully, I said, look, if somebody's gonna get a board, fill a position for board director, a C-suite, SVP, I don't think they're going to really necessarily always look for a 21-year-old. They might prefer somebody who looks a little older, looks like they got more experience, But at the same time, young is not a disadvantage, but young people are scared of that. They feel like, oh, I got this baby face look, right? I look, what that tells me is that they feel like they look incapable of fulfilling the role. They don't have the experience, right? They look lost, so finding the right photographer is so important, that where you just have to know what you can bring to the table, right? And just look confident, figure out a way to just look confident, and photo is just one thing, right? I mean, your everyday work that people see, that's also another, obviously another thing when leaders look at, to promote you or whatnot. But your branding, do put some effort. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to see you, having a selfie in a bar, family photo. You just crop your head out. People see that, they just know, okay, that kind of shows that you're not really taking your career too seriously in a way, right? All those little details matter. So
I think
in the
we're all
least,
guilty of that.
yeah, I mean, in the least, just get a professional photo somewhere to start, right? Don't overthink it, and when the time comes, it's good to make that investment, right? I mean, you see people buying things that they probably can't really afford all the time, right? Luxury good market. We know that the vast majority of people pouring money into it, they're not exactly in the top 1%, right? So if you can save money for that kind of stuff, you can save a few $100 to invest in yourself. And when you invest in yourself, there should be the return, right? You get that next promotion, that should be more money.
Well said. Well said. I think there's a, well, I'm just going to generalize here, but my conversations with some of the young folks is ROI isn't really a dimension that they think about. Not everybody does. So most folks are thinking about image, perception, and they do good work. Every single one of the people I interacted with do great work. But I think their image online suffers sometimes with
Mhm.
those bar shots or those cropped out photographs. I mean, I'll admit I'm guilty of it, just like most other folks out there.
Right. You pay for what you get. You really do, right? And I'm sure the people you mentored, I'm sure you tell them a lot of it is also who you know, right? But people want to make connection. They want to be associated with those who are successful, those who are confident. They bring something to the table. But when you don't look like that, how do you expect people to want to connect with you?
Man, you hit that on the head. I will have to say that it's showing up before you even step in the room. That's what I'm gonna call that. When people see that photo, they think about who you are when they see that photo, because like Amir said, LinkedIn is basically embedded in the corporate world now. When you go to an interview, they look at your LinkedIn first before they even look at your resume nowadays. So your photo is so important to have. Like you said, you don't want to be in the bar, waving with a drink in your hand, and that's your LinkedIn photo. So, like you said, Joe, temporarily, AI is good temporarily. If you just need to get a photo out there that's decent enough to get you by for a little while, but the return on investment, invest in yourself with getting the right photos done. And I think that the fear is for a lot of people is that, oh, I'm paying a certain amount. And for some people, for a lot of people, it's a lot of money, but people don't understand the long term goal and the return on investment that you're not going to take these photos and then all of a sudden 6 months later you get new photos, or a year later you get new photos, unless you have some drastic weight loss that you need new photos. Most of the time these photos are going to last you 3, 4, 5 years for the most part. So I hope, having this conversation, people understand that it's good to get these photos and how long they're going to last you for a very long time.
100%.
Yeah. I will say the price of a photo shoot is way less usually than the price of an automobile for 1 month. So,
It really is. And
yeah.
and really just to quickly add on to that, I mean, price could be one thing, right? But I think most of the time people just don't want to be in front of the camera, you know? I mean, and I can resonate with that. I don't want to be in front of the camera. Heck, I was kind of nervous being here. I don't know what I was gonna say, right? Remember Renard, I was like, dude, you got a list of questions you can throw me so I can prepare ahead of time. And you said, no, there's not. We're just gonna talk. I'm like, dang it. I'm screwed, right? I'm screwed. Yeah. But then, being here is like, I just have to trust that, I know what I bring, and hopefully some of my message will resonate with some of the people, add some value to some people, inspire some of the young professionals or seasoned veteran leaders, right? To do something and make that next level, right? Um, and I don't like my own bright, so I don't. But it is what it is. We're never perfect, and I'm still here talking, right? So same thing with people out there. Just do it, but bring a good attitude. I think that's the biggest thing. Just show yourself, and then let your work do the talking. Really.
I like that. I
That's
like
sage
that.
advice.
Yeah, that best advice you can give is just go in there with an open mind, and have fun. They're
That's
gonna
so
be your
important.
photos. Have fun in there, and like I said, you do a great job, and it's an art to be a great photographer. I've known a couple who have been photographer. It's an art. It's just not you're taking a photo and you click the button and that's it. It is an art to doing great photos, and I commend you just like I commend any other great photographer for what they do, because you're bringing a brand, you're bringing that executive swagger through the lens that people need, especially moving in their career. And like Amir said, when you're a young professional, you need to start thinking about your branding young. When you first getting into your career, you need to start thinking about that now, because that's going to be building over time. And a lot of us, we don't think about it until it gets a little bit later in our career. But I think if you're a young professional, start thinking about it now. Start thinking about talking to a photographer like Joe, that we have on the show, and do that. And Joe, I want to ask one question from you. I ask everybody. You know, when you step for us, as we step into the office, what's our theme music? But for you, you're at home, it's photography, you got people coming there. What's some of the music? What's your theme music for when someone get you ready, get you hype to get that photo shoot going?
Man, for me, just personally, right? Honestly, the first thing I think of is Empire State of Mind.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, it's my
Okay.
heart music, I mean, I love the big cities. My journey, honestly, it started there. I mean, that was when Sarah popped the question, it's like, you want to do it, right? You look happy. Let's just take the leap of faith. Let's just try it. Without doing that, I would never be here talking right now, you know? And I just I think the message, like, I want to be one of the best out there, but of course I can only do that if I can change people's lives, right? Bring an influence. um so yeah, and like we talked about, I want to take this really quick moment to give a couple shout outs real quick, just because my two mentors, they share the same value. They've done so much for me and my family, and plus, I've had so many professionals and executives who are very intentional with their branding, but when they finally booked with me, they said, we finally found you, right? Because they've been holding off. They didn't know who to go to, and that's a struggle for some folks. So those who are in Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, look into Daniel Wakefield, okay, at Top Tier Headshots, and in Boston, Velfucci at Velfucci Photography. Yeah, those two will rock your socks off.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I like how you said you want to leave a great legacy. You want to be the best, you want to be one of the best. When it's all said and done, you want to be like, man, you want people to say, Joe Fang, great photographer, great person, great human being. Because it's you do such a great job of photography, but it's more than that. It's like you establish a connection with people that last outside of those photos. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
And thank you.
Absolutely. And you're living up to your standards of leadership. You know, you're celebrating other photographers, and I think that's incredible.
Yeah, I think it's important to, lift the community around you, and recognize those who do great work, recognize those who, have brought you under their wing, right? Yeah, you very few, make it just all by themselves.
Couldn't agree more.
Oh, man, so I'm gonna have to say this. We got down to the end, and Joe, we want to thank you for being on Black Belts and Boardrooms. It has been a great time. I know we can go 2 more hours. We can just talk about photos all day, and we could go another 2 hours about it. But we want to thank you for being on Black Belts and Boardrooms, and we want to tell our listeners we will see you on the next one.
All right, peace.